So, welcome to Screenology's Free to Create podcast. So, the idea of this podcast is that we kind of demystify different aspects of filmmaking. So, we've looked at feature filmmaking. We had a couple of young chaps that made a feature film with just themselves and one camera during the pandemic. And have got distribution in the States. And then they were alongside some students. So we've got a student here today, Ines. And then we've got two professionals, Karen Walsh and Vicky Hinners. Hello. And today we're looking at factual filmmaking and that whole world. And the important thing about these podcasts is that we're kind of we're just uncovering and discovering and trying to be as authentic as possible. So so much that we hear on the internet about filmmaking is people showing off and showing how clever they are, and it just puts everyone off. We find it puts our students off. They go, "Oh, I'm not doing it properly," and da da da. And I guess one of the foundation principles of Screenology is it's like you've got to discover it for yourself. There's no other way. It's like being told stuff doesn't really go in, and besides, it's always a new problem, isn't it? It's always a new world. So before we get started, I thought it'd be nice if you just introduce yourselves, a little bit of background, and give us a sense for the listeners who's around the table. So over to you, Vicky.
So I am Vicky Hinners, and I've been in television, probably over 20 years, and started off as a researcher, grew up and been series producing, I guess, for the last couple of years, and been doing sort of like travel shows, but also mainly all sort of kind of documentaries. And the last thing I did was about trawler men in our wonderful seas around Britain.
Great, brilliant, thank you. Ines.
So I'm Ines Rouaz. So I'm last year at Screenology, studying at Screenology.
So your final year of a BA.
Final year, of a BA. I've been mostly working on fiction this year, but usually I work more on factual,
Great.
Documentary.
And you'd like to go into factual more than fiction after you?
Definitely, 100%. Getting back to like self-shooting and having a small crew and
Great.
So,
And so through this discussion, at any time you've got a question, you're like thinking you want to know something, please pipe up. It's more about you and people in your demographic than it is about me. I don't know anything about factual. I don't know anything about. I try to go through life as though I don't know anything about anything, because I think that's how you find out interesting things. And I don't know much about factual, to be honest. So it's going to be an inquiry for me as well. Karen.
So my name's Karen Walsh. I'm a producer, director, series producer, edit producer. It depends which project and which hat. I've been in the business for over 35 years now, and started in local radio, and then was lucky enough to be working in a big BBC network centre in Manchester, and got a chance to move over into TV. And my eclectic career has been exactly that. I started in light entertainment, doing big Saturday night song and dance shows. Moved over into daytime telly and cut my teeth as a director, and then sort of through trying out various topics, I've done everything from natural history, always with people attached, not blue chip, but DIY, cookery, travelogue, documentary, current affairs, engineering, you name it, I've probably done it somewhere in that 35 years. And quite some time ago, when it was not fashionable for directors to be self-shooting, they looked at how they could chop the budgets down and decided it would be a very good idea indeed if directors did self-shoot. We were all horrified, but it was like, take the camera and go out and film or don't go. And so we picked up a camera and learned how to do it. And for me, it worked. I found a talent that I had self-shooting, and so that became a natural progression for me. So I've pretty much self-shot for the last 20 years. And that's it. Here I am now, towards the back end of my career, and having had a great time.
Great. And so, I guess that already opens up a first question that I'm quite interested in. Is like, what makes everything the same? What's the same? What are the same challenges that, whether you're working in cookery or, traveling somewhere around the world, or, shooting about nature? What are some of the things that, as a factual filmmaker, producer, that are just kind of always show up? Yeah, what? Yeah.
Story.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Is that your story?
It's all about story.
Right. Yeah.
You'll get to, you'll go for a job interview and they'll go, oh, you don't have any experience on, whatever it is. And you go, but it doesn't matter because the researchers have got all the facts and you have to turn it into a story. And that's all it is. It's a story.
Yeah, I agree. Storytelling. It's also you've got to, got to understand that plan A probably isn't going to work and probably plan B isn't going to work, and you just have to kind of sort of have that sort of confidence and be a team player to you can't do everything yourself. I think you definitely it's people around you and together you make something. And I think you have to storytell, but you also have to be that team player. That's my great belief, because you can't know it all, can you? Well, I certainly can't know it all anyway.
Sure. And what's that starting point with story? Imagine for some of our, some of the people that are listening to this, have never met, maybe made something with their phone or whatever. What's the starting point of story in factual? People kind of get it to some extent in fiction maybe, but they don't think, they think, I guess a lot of people think, I just go out and shoot a load of stuff and then something will merge that's interesting.
If you go out saying we'll make it work in the edit, that's the kiss of death, truly. No. You have to have a really clear understanding. Story has to have an arc, it has to have a beginning, a middle and end. And when we have to do all the deliverables for programs once they've been shot, one of the things we do have to do is write sort of 100 words about what the film is about, write 50 words and then kind of write 20 words, and these are all things that they'll use for Radio Times and the TV listings and stuff. And so you have to tell them in 2 lines what that program is, and if you can't do that, then you don't know what the show is. So that's what I would say to people going out. You've got to tell me exactly what this is about in 2 lines, and you've got to be really clear on that.
Right, yeah. And you were kind of saying that you might have a plan for that at the beginning, and then even those 2 lines kind of shift during the process. Is that
you're right. You're right. You do have to start off with that, because you've got to know why you're doing it. Of course, you need to know why you're doing it, and you've got to have that arc. Is that definitely? But I think that you just also got to have that sense of going, okay, what I thought this part of the sequence was going to be is actually changing, whether you're doing obdoc or even if you're doing stuff that's quite sort of heavily produced with presenters, you're still sort of there going, okay, this is going to slightly change, or this is possibly a little bit more interesting. But I always end up going back every day kind of with my little notebook going, right, what's my sequence today, what's my story, how does that relate to the story that I did yesterday, and going forward. So you're constantly navigating that.
The key is every scene has to lead on to the next scene and feed into that. And quite often you can slog for, all day to get a scene that actually just doesn't work. And that you spent all day filming it, but nobody watching knows. So you have to go, cutting room floor, leave it out. But every scene has to develop. So you look at, okay, what am I feeding into the next scene? And then where is this scene going to go? So it has to be a progression.
Yeah.
And in terms of your experience of developing those story skills, is that something that's still developing for you? Have you got a sense of kind of like, I kind of know what I'm doing now, or is it still a discovery?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. In fact, just the last thing that I was doing, which was a completely new series that, and it was quite ambitious, and we definitely had a set idea of how we were going to do it. And God, it's just hilarious. We were like, the other day when we all sort of met up again, we're just like going, oh God, the journey that we had gone on during that production was certainly not the starting point that we had, because, we're creating something new and in an environment that we didn't really know very much about, in the sense when we were sort of filming with people out at sea. And yes, of course, you kind of know that they're going to be fishing, and you've got to make sure you're not going to do that repetitiveness things or just following the fish. You've got to follow the story. But at the same time, we were filming different boats at the same time, so trying to feed those stories in. And it's just, I agree with you, when you're in production, you've got to know what your narrative arc is, but also when you get to the edit, a lot of that, it can be done in the edit too, and that's sort of... God,
there's another discovery at that point.
It is another discovery.
There's a new story to be found.
Yeah. It definitely changes when you get to the edit.
And you learn stuff, so you always think, God, I wish we had a second series. The amount of stuff that we have learned from the first series that,
I guess, sorry to cut you, but I guess that really work only if we are very prepared before starting the shooting. before starting any production. Because I get I resonate a lot with what you just said. If I hear someone on fiction or documentary saying like, oh, we sorted out at the edit, I get very worried.
Yeah.
I get very, very worried because I don't know if it's because I'm a compulsive planner or because I need to see what I'm doing step by step. But I feel like, I haven't got much experience in documentary, but for what I've been doing for the past years, I know that I research so much that it hurts my brain before starting anything, because I feel like specifically when you go into, I've done quite a lot of street interviews, so you don't want to end up asking questions to someone that you can answer. So you need to be overly prepared to talk to such wide range of people, and so I'm just wondering if it is a question of which type of filmmaker you are, or if it's set in stone and you got to do your research before.
I suppose that's a useful question for Ines. When you started out, did you find yourself doing more planning, and then got more confidence? Just like, okay, I've got a general sense of where we're going, and now stuff comes in. Or has there been any evolution around that? Or as Ines says, are some people just planners, and some people are like me? I'm not a planner. I'll just go out and I like to have a unifying idea, and then I'll just go and see what happens. And I don't think one or the other's right, but is that something that's evolved?
I think it depends what I'm doing. So when I do quite a few presenter-led stuff, and quite often what I might do is that, yes, I plan it, and the research is there, and we quite often do a research bible and have that with me, which takes me all the way through to the edit as well. But what I might do with a presenter is sort of kind of like go, right, this is what the scene is. These are the kind of like 3 things that I want to get from it. And then I quite, depending on the presenter, but then I quite let them go, as it were, and sort of like, make sure that obviously they are giving me those things that I've asked, but also just allowing them to have their voice in it, and because that's what a presenter's there for, is to have, but do you mean for them to explore things, so they don't know the answers, and they're meeting people for the first time, and I want them to feel like they don't know everything about them, so that they can explore it at the time. But at the same time, that seems slightly contained by me, because I know kind of what I want to get out of it, and then sometimes they might give me something new, and then I'm like, oh, okay, right. And then Karen said, then that makes me then go do my homework that evening and go, right, so then what's the progression of the next sequence that I'm doing? So
I think going back to your question, Tom, though, if I look back to my early films, oh my God, toe curling, is all I can say. But, you learn from going into the edit and seeing what you've brought back. And I think what's missing for today's youngsters coming up and in, and it's just a sad reflection of where the industry's gone, is that in my day, it was never dreamed of that you would go and film something and then you would not see it through to the edit. And of course, that's how you learn, because you always saw the shots you got right, the shots you got wrong. And we had great cameramen and really awful cameramen at times, and you learn from watching them and working with them. And now we have a very real problem that we don't have young people who are going out and filming. They're coming up as, sort of young self-shooters. They know how to operate the camera, but they don't know how to put sequences together, and they never see their footage in the edit. And what happens is you get people like me in the edit who go, oh, holy cow, here's the mountain to climb, but we will turn it into something that looks great. And then when they see the footage again, they think, well, that was great, what I did was lovely, so they don't learn. So I say, to all of the youngsters, I'll phone them up and say, look, if you just come into the edit, sit in the back of the edit, watch what we're doing, try and do that, because it's the most important way that you will learn. And I know that over the years, my shooting and my production skills have obviously honed in the ways that Vicky's has, and I think going back to how we set up shoots now, you've got a much wiser head on. The pitfalls that are likely to. So you're thinking about all of that as you're setting up. But as Vicky says, every day it will change on location, and you have to reinvent the wheel a little bit. Yeah, and I guess there's that you're in the edit whilst you're there out in location. You're kind of thinking about it, piecing it together.
If you're not, you're in trouble.
But that only comes from being in the edit. So So, you come back and you go, well, where's the cutaway shot? You've spent the whole time talking to me about this glass of water, and there's no shot of the glass of water. It's a real simple 101 level stuff, but until you see it, you don't get it. Yeah. So come into the edit.
Yeah. Ines, when you think back to some of your early stuff, what were the things that you learned from your experience? Did you let's take the planning. Did sometimes you have loads and loads of stuff, but not the things you needed, or when you thought about the edit, because you quite often edited what you were doing. Is that right? Yeah,
I do.
So what were some of those learnings?
I'll say the best example is really the work I've done in Tunisia last summer. So I didn't. So it was a bit weird. So I wanted to shoot this small video short documentary about the crisis, but I got caught up in my research.
Right. Yeah.
And I just couldn't start, which is I don't know why, but that's what happened. And I was living with one of my friends who were just like seeing me going to work and coming back and working, and she was like, "Is there any point you're gonna take that camera out, or are you just doing that?" And I was arguing with her, being like, "You don't just go out with a camera and just record anything. You have to know what you're recording." But at some point I started thinking like, no, I think you're overthinking it. Like you need to go out and actually start shooting some stuff, because I think it's maybe because I've worked so I come from a background, to explain what I'm trying to explain now, like I come from a background when I start with photography, so street photography, and I've always been very interested by war reporting and reporting in general. So I worked a lot years ago on homelessness. So I have this kind of like ethical issue that I feel like I need to know a subject by heart and make contact and involve in the community before even taking my camera out, because I think it's kind of like voyeurism. I need to work a little bit on it because it can be a bit much. But so that's why I spent so much time. I spent 6 weeks talking to everyone. Everyone knew me in a country where like I barely speak the language. Like I speak French, good. Yeah, that was good for me. But people start speaking Arabic, and I got an Arabic background, so they expected me to speak Arabic, and I was just like, I don't.
Just smiling nicely.
Exactly. I just got the bone structure, but nothing else. So I just make so much connection that I was at the end spending time with friends. I made friends, in this refugees camp, and just staying there and chatting with them. And I remember this day when I was just like, okay, there's so much thing they said today who could have been so valuable for this video, and I didn't get them. Yeah. Which is a shame. So I asked them politely, I was like, can I come back with a camera? And they were like, yeah. You can definitely come back with a camera. We really want to see that. So I was like, cool. So I turned up with my camera, and I could tell that some people were very enthusiastic, and some other really didn't like it. So I didn't want it to record too much. At some point, I just chatting with them and being like, look, I don't want to be an intruder. Maybe because I could tell that they were really watching the camera, I was like, do you want to shoot something? And I just gave the camera to them, and that's how it started. Everyone was way more comfortable. Right. One of my friends was here to take a bit of sound, really badly unusable, pretty much unusable, but she tried very hard, but horrible sound. And I bought specifically a mic for that thing, and I was just like, whatever, it's okay. But I find it very interesting to over planning, and then arrive and be like, actually, you know what, let's just chat and record what we're saying, and maybe I find something, which I think I did. Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about that, because I've done an awful lot of ob doc, and quite often just filming on my own as a one-woman crew. And it's a real tricky one, because I watch other youngsters go in and they go, oh, we didn't get anything out of them today. And I look at the rushes, and it's like they're too pushy, and so the person closes down. So you need a lot of people skills of understanding where the others come, and I know for me the first thing I always do is you got to gain their trust. You have 24 hours to get them to like you and become their new best friend. And then there's a sort of fine line of when do you start filming, and I feel that once you've got the trust, you actually need to get in there fairly quickly, because they'll tell you the stories, but you'll never get it the first time twice. And the one thing I always say to the people I film, I make sure that they understand that it's our film. They're in control. It's not me saying to them, this is what you're doing. And I say to them that this has to work two ways. I have to trust you implicitly that you will tell me the truth and you will talk from your heart and you'll be honest. And you have to trust me that if there's any point in the film where you go, actually, I don't want you to include this, I won't include it. And I give you my word on that. And it's amazing how that, the trust leaps up a notch. I remember during the foot and mouth crisis, this years back now, I went down to live on a farm in Devon and live with a farming family, filming them going through the hell of the foot and mouth. And I was filming the wife, and by this point we'd become really close friends. I was sort of the only woman around that she could talk to, and she was opening up in front of the camera and she was beginning to get into quite personal territory, and I turned the camera off and she said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, you don't want to say this to 2 million people. You have to live with this for the rest of your life. It will make great telly, but you will be really unhappy having said that. You're saying it because it's just you and me in the room. And she'd forgotten the camera was there. And it was amazing for not having that bit of information, which Channel 4 would have loved. We actually got far more out of the film because at that point she knew she could completely trust me to guide her. And so it's all about that, really, trust and getting in there. And as you say, give them the camera, let them play with it. Give the kids the camera, they love that.
Great. Any other challenges you've experienced in terms of authenticity? I guess it's that authenticity, and I guess also, because you're working with presenters as well. It's like what's your involvement and their involvement, and how's that trust built?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think like when I've done sort of. Not when done presenter-led stuff, you've got even a shorter space of time to suddenly just go, open up your life to us and tell us everything about you, and and then you're doing it for your presenter. So it is trying to get that authenticity. It is quite a fine line. So we always recce beforehand, so you kind of get to know the people, and like we were saying, and that's then my opportunity to just say, well, kind of like what Karen was saying, really, like we're trying to make this film. There might be things like if you don't feel uncomfortable about, let's just like have that conversation now. So I try to do that quite a bit, and then when and talk about whoever the presenter is, like they're like this, blah blah, and then when we go with the presenter, it is. It depends. It just also depends on what presenter. It depends on what kind of program you're doing. But when I've done stuff for travel programs with Steve Perkins, which is all meant to be about people along, experiencing different things through the Mekong River, it's always. She's very good at being very compassionate and making people feel comfortable. So straight away, I already know that's a part of who she is. So that makes my life easier. But it depends, isn't it? Some presenters are just sort of, it depends what you're trying to do, Mm-hmm. And natural history might be slightly different, I guess, with a presenter or not. I don't know. Karen, because you've done?
The natural history I do tends to be people like, an obdoc in Chester Zoo or something. Okay. So you're working with the zookeepers. Yeah. So all the natural history I do, the stories are told through people and their passion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So again, it's about building their trust that you're going to do the best possible film for them that you can. And I think once they understand, if they hold stuff back, I always say, if you hold stuff back, the viewer will see. They're not stupid. Sure. They'll get the sense that you're not fully engaged. And again, that goes back to once they trust you, then they trust you enough to open up and do the right thing for them. Yeah. And I pride myself, I think, on all the films I've done, the contributors have always been happy with the outcome. I feel I would have failed as a filmmaker if they hadn't been happy with what we'd cut. Yeah.
So let's move on to collaborators working with other people, and in particular, people that are coming into the industry. Have you had any experiences where it's like, oh my God, what are they doing? And equally, have you been like, oh my God, amazing? What a joy to work with.
I'm sure. And also when I first started out,
You're sure, yeah.
That's a sort of cringe thing where you just think, when you're talking about like, when I first started working in television and I was there like super ego and like trying to get everything out of somebody, and then suddenly just thinking, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing? They're telling me their whole life story, and I've kind of got really excited by the fact that I've just got this amazing information, but actually I'm not safeguarding them, and sort of learned quite quickly that I need to do that too. But for me, the last thing that we did, we had somebody just literally come out of doing a degree, but she hadn't done any television stuff, and but she was brilliant because she was just really candid, and she would just ask lots of questions like, well, why are you doing that? And you just go, oh right, yes, but do you know what I mean? Seeing it from a different perspective, because you so get used to it, or we spend a lot of time constantly kind of going over and over things, and she would suddenly want to ask us stuff about it, and then it makes you kind of go, you know what, we're overthinking this, or but because she was asking sort of quite questions that made you just sort of stop and go, yeah, right, why are we doing that? And so that was quite useful. And then there was definitely times also when you'll be doing things quite understandably that you just think, what are you doing? Like, you just spent like 2 hours drawing a really nice diagram or something. We really need to like kind of move on. But that's us managing her as well, and and also maybe you're so busy that sometimes you get sort of like locked into that, and you need to kind of you've got to bring new people up, haven't you? Because they're only going to learn if you sort of open up your world, and also show that you can make mistakes. You can't always get it right, that you've gone down one road and now you've gone, oh, actually now we need to kind of like rethink that, and just make sure that everybody is in all of those meetings really, because that's where they can learn too, isn't it?
Sure, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I find interesting here is most of the students, not all the students, but most of the students come thinking, when I leave, I'll know everything and everything will be okay and I'll never make a mistake again.
Why am I laughing?
and I literally just recently had a third year who's done their first sort of bigger project. They've done everything on their own, and they've done their first bigger project, and lots of things have gone wrong, and they said, Tom, I've just discovered that filmmaking is problem solving. I'm like, there you go, that's it. Bingo.
You learn from the going wrong stuff.
Yes,
I mean, and that's all a learning curve. So I'd say, don't ever beat yourself up. Stand back and go, okay, what did I learn from that? And next time I'll do it better. Yeah. And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's
interesting. Putting your hand up, isn't it? And just saying, like, when you're in a team, just going, I don't think I know the answer to this. Like, what do you think? Or let's give it some bit more time to think about it, or whatever. You just you can't always know.
No, and I think that's a difficult thing for someone going into the. I think there's a feeling like I don't want to look stupid, and it's just like, but actually that can be really frustrating if somebody's pretending they know and they don't know, and then you suddenly discover something's not being dealt with because they didn't just go, I didn't realise, I don't know where to plug that in. Or
people like Vicky and I, we work with the entry-level people, so we know they're entry-level.
Yeah. Sure.
So if they ask us a question, we're not going to look at them and go, oh, you're so stupid.
Exactly.
You go, well, that's a very good question, and I'm very happy to impart my knowledge.
Exactly,
It's never a problem. No. I always say to juniors, look, I will teach you as much as I can if you want to know. Or if you feel I'm telling you how to suck eggs, tell me, and I'll stop. Yeah. But if you want to learn how the camera, why I'm framing this, why we're doing this, I will more than happy tell you all of that.
Yeah. But I think there's a fear that that's not what's going to happen. You're going to be, it's crazy. Yeah.
It won't, unless they're completely idiots. There's, the execs. In which case, you don't want to be working with them anyway.
Sure. So the other thing is, how are things changing? How are you experiencing? What's changing? And I guess again, thinking from people going into the industry now, how is it different? From when you kind of started working your way up, and in what ways?
Money. They always say that. Budgets. I don't know. I think that what's great now, what I really like now, is that I feel that it's still got quite a long way to go, but I do feel like television is slightly becoming a bit more diversified. There is more people in it, and I think that there is a sense of that, with all these different platforms, that there's just not one way to do it, and I think I find that exciting. I find sometimes that I'm a bit like, I'm a bit behind. Shit, I better kind of and that's what I like about having young people, because they make me question myself and make me question things, and I don't know, as I said, don't always know the answers. I think that's exciting about today. But don't know. I mean, just as you're saying, having big crews is not such a thing. although I say that, I don't know, I still work with crews.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's some really great things that are happening, as Vicky says. It's just there's a new energy coming in with the youngsters, and the technology is changing so rapidly. You buy a camera, and 2 years later it's out of date, and you need to buy another camera, and so on. And there's, with the advent of drones, they've replaced the tripod, and the young people who are coming in, they're across all that technology, which is really exciting. And so that's great on that level. My sadness is I feel that they're coming in and then they're not picking up the real basic grounding stuff, the 101 entry-level stuff that they need to know to use as a building block. So as I say, going back to, they don't come into the edits, they never see what they're shooting. I look at a lot of stuff on TV now, and it's real wobbly cam, it's out of focus, it's poorly framed. And that would never have happened in my day, because you're kind of trained up to that and you see it in your edits, and somehow it's sort of being left behind, where it doesn't matter anymore. And maybe I'm being old school, but personally I think it does matter. When you see a really beautifully crafted film that's well shot, the framing's beautiful, the lighting's gorgeous, there's something to be said for that. And I worry very slightly that in the sort of non-scripted area, that is being left slightly behind, because they're not getting the training that they need to understand what those basic building blocks are.
Yeah, and I think there is an acceptance of a freer aesthetic with the young people as well. It's just like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to portrait video. I still, that's not real. You can't turn your camera that way. It's got to be landscape. What are you talking about? but it's interesting, isn't it? It's, nevertheless, a lot of the content you're consuming is created on phones really quickly, and so therefore there's a more freedom in terms of seeing that in terms of broadcast or streaming media. It's more acceptable. Whereas for me, I'm like, oh God, why can't that be in focus? And why is it, And then sometimes I don't know. With students, I don't know. Are you doing that on purpose, or are you doing, And we have to have those discussions sometimes. But so I think it's quite interesting, that aesthetic. Where do you sit in terms of,
I'm very happy to hear what you just said, because I had this discussion 2 years ago with another producer in Bristol. We looked at my CV, and I was already working for him, and he was like, yeah, this is really good, but you need to specify it. And I was a bit clueless. I was like, no, I understand that I need to pick something, but for me, my background was showing that I was trying to know each component of making a movie. And again, that's maybe me being a bit more, overthinking it a little bit. But I don't know. I'm a bit older, not a lot, but a little bit older than the people studying here, and I can feel there's a little gap in between me and them in terms of when I decided that I wanted to be a filmmaker and I was a teenager. I went and looked through all the directors that I loved and looked through their background and just see what they were doing, and I could tell that every single of them were from the bottom to the top. And so for me, it always been a case to okay, it might take you years or even decades, I don't know, but it's really important to work from runner to also work in, I'm taking fiction, for example, but documentary work like that as well, working a little bit in sound, working a bit in art direction, working in editing room, working on camera, working on this. And what I found out as a very young producer, what I'm finding out is that all those experiences helps me massively to communicate with everyone. As simple, because I don't have any issue that, I won't say a lot, but some filmmakers have with the sound, for example. It's a bit of a war in between image and sound, because I heard a lot of horror stories of people sending footage and be like, you got 2 days, and not understanding how long it takes to actually produce a good mixing for anything. So I will join your perspective on that, to be I'm a little bit worried sometimes when I work with people who just worked on one specific position and nothing else, and are in charge of maybe other people, but not really knowing what's going on. I think that can be very stressful for everyone, to not having a kind of time frame and And a lot of, and then it's about communication, obviously. It's about like discussing how much time everyone needs. But I believe that if you do that, if you work a little bit, not for years maybe, but just a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there, enough to understand how each department's work, you got more chance to have a relaxed crew on set and to just, be a nice crew together, working nicely together. So that's, my opinion.
And in terms of that consumption of content, are you quite forgiving, or do you like things that look well crafted? Or, again, I know you're not as young as the youngest, but
I'm okay. It depends which type of content.
So it's context.
I think it's just context, really.
Yeah.
Like if you're working if I'm working on a food traveling show, I got in my mind that it needs to look a certain. It needs to have a certain aspect because we do it for a certain audience. Now, if I'm working on a documentary about punk feminism, obviously we can have a bit more, shaky stuff and a bit more grain here and there. So I think it's really a question of context for me. But then I don't know, because I've seen some crazy documentaries, just pushing all the boundaries, and I really, really like that too. So I don't think I have an answer. I just have an answer for me, maybe.
Sure, yeah. No, got it. No, that's helpful. So let's talk about moments where you've absolutely loved what you're doing. Like peak moment, when is it like, oh, God, this is why I do this?
I've got a plane ticket in my hand and I'm going somewhere interesting.
Plane ticket in your hand, yeah.
It's a real privilege, though, isn't it? I think it is, it's even just going into people's houses is sometimes a real privilege, isn't it? I just think I'm so lucky that, when I first started working in television, I did things about childcare social workers, and then like you, I've been able to go off and live with tribes. I just think that's amazing to be able to have that. So I've had lots of those like, wow, I love this job.
Right.
And then I have had moments where also I've gone, oh, I can't go to my best mate's wedding. Oh, so that's not such a good thing because I'm off filming or something. But at the same time, it is an incredible privilege to be allowed into people's lives. So
I think it's also for me, so the films that I've done that have actually changed people's opinion. That's a privilege. You think, I've done my job here. If they've watched that, and I know it's a while back, but when we did Foot and Mouth, a couple of days after the first one went out, so I would film it the day before. The rushes were sent back to Bristol, they were cut overnight, and the following day they were transmitted on Channel 4, so it was really reactive. And about 2 days later the post arrived, and there was a vast increase in the post. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot to mention to you that some people will feel obliged to write, and a few of those people will be a bit unkind, and you suddenly get very protective again. And I have to say, we had over 100 letters over the period that I was down there, and there wasn't a single bad one. And one really stuck in my head, and it was from a family in London who obviously were fairly wealthy, and they said, we've been absolutely sick to death of this whole foot and mouth crisis and whinging farmers, and we didn't really know what the problem was because you're going to get compensation for any animals that are slaughtered. And we've watched your programme, and we really understand now. You've changed our minds about, this is their life's work being ripped away from them. And they said, when this is over, please come as our guests to London. We live in a big house. Come and stay with us for the weekend. Have at our expense, come and have a trip in London. And the family are looking at me and go, are people really doing this? And it's like, well, yeah. And then they would send presents. But we changed perspective. We changed people's understanding, and that's the power of TV when you get it right. It's a massive responsibility, but equally, you can change it for the wrong way, and that's not good. So.
Yeah. I think even like just the last thing that I worked on when we were filming with fishermen, it was, I think one of the things is that you don't see much on television sometimes is a celebration of kind of like working class. It's like quite, and the fishermen in there just felt like, they loved it. They felt like really that their worlds were being portrayed in like a quite positive way, and that they, saw a real sense of who they were, and that was good. So I just felt like, yeah, great, because, rather than just sort of, Debt Street or whatever. It's
sure,
like,
yeah.
There have been lots of times though where you do sit there going, what am I doing?
Why did I not film that? Why did I not do that?
I remember years ago I did a ob doc about a whole ski season down in Val d'Isère, and I came down at the end for the last 5 weeks when it was all falling apart, and they said, you have to go down and get this back together, and we haven't got an ending. Anyway, we got everybody back on board, and it's 2:00 in the morning, and we're following the chalet maids going from bar to bar, and you can't film in the bars because it's so noisy, but between the bar is maybe a 50-meter walk, and it's icy, so you know that might be the moment something will happen, and so it's 2:00 in the morning. There's the assistant producer who's doing the sound, the cameraman, and me, and we're all sitting in the car. They've just gone into the bar, and we know it's another hour's wait, and it's freezing cold. It's 2 in the morning. You want to be in your bed, and I just looked at the cameraman, and he looked at me, and I was like, this is shit, isn't it? And it's like, yeah. And then suddenly, oh, they're coming out. We grab the camera, we jump out, and we'd film them going to the next bar, and they go in, and we go, and we go back in the car again.
There's many moments like that, isn't there?
Many moments.
So many moments. I've definitely had one where I'm filming on my knees, on the pavement, and through a car, and I'm there just thinking, oh my God, I'm now locked into this stupid position where my knees are really hurting. But director's asking a lot of questions, and I'm there trying to slightly get a bit more comfortable and like this, and just going, this is going to be used, isn't it? It's definitely going to be used, because otherwise I'm spending a good 40 minutes just here, with my knees just like, so many moments of all of that.
To build on that, have there been any times where you're in the edit and you're thinking, there's no story here? There's not. Yeah.
I have had a few moments like that. Where
you just how are we going to find it?
Or maybe we're going to have to go back.
Right,
maybe
really?
we're going to have to reshoot. And luckily, haven't had to do that.
Right,
but I have had moments. Yeah, because you have. I have. I have moments just going, I can't see the wood for the trees on this. I need to have some space. I need to bring somebody else in, or I just need some time out from it. Do you know what I mean? Whatever.
Yeah.
Because I think, I've definitely had moments like that. And I think people who haven't, even people who really, like exec producers, they've had moments like that.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's end on something more positive. So, imagine a couple of years' time, you can wave a magic wand. Whatever you want to be doing is happening. What does it look like? And it's for everybody. Do you want? You can start, Ines. Go on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you get to wave a magic wand and write your career out over the next couple of years. Where would you be?
I'd be working on a traveling show.
Right.
Yeah, crossing Asia, I guess.
Yeah.
And trying to prepare the next one. Pretty much. That's what I want, really. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Just being on the go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Definitely great. You can do it. If we can do it, you can do it. I don't know. What about you, Karen?
You know what? It's hard to say because I've done 35 years. There's a lot of programs under that bridge.
Sure. But it doesn't have to be about programs. It might be something else. I don't know. Yeah. Well, this is anything. This is anything goes. Don't feel you're under pressure.
Well, I think I'm getting towards the end of my career, and certainly in the last few years, I've made more effort to put more of a work-life balance. I think Vicky's actually got it right. I've lost track of the number of family events, friends events, dinner parties, things I've signed up to that I've missed. And you have very understanding friends in this business because your social life, your home life suffers enormously. Mm-hmm. So putting more of a work-life balance in has definitely been a good thing. And anything that involves travel, personally, I'm there.
Have you got any places you haven't been to yet that you'd like to go, or places you'd like to go
loads.
back to?
I've almost hit 100 countries I've gone to around the world, but there's still another 270 odd or so to visit, I think. So, lots of travelling to be done.
Great.
I suppose with me, because I'm a mum with a 4-year-old, I would probably like to stay in the industry, still continue to series produce, but I would probably like to do more see more job sharing. Really, I don't feel there's lots of talk about it, and there's a little bit of it happening. But I think it'd be great if the industry was able to kind of have more of that, because otherwise you quite often lose people at a certain age because they go off and have families or whatever. So that would be quite good to have that.
And talking of that, are there any other changes in the industry you'd like to see? what that may be starting or maybe talked about that are not happening? Is there anything, if Ines is going to come in and start shaking things up with these young people, what would you like to see happening? What would you like them to see them clamouring for?
For me, two things: better training for them, so that, and maybe, as I say, maybe that is old school, but I feel because they don't get to see their programs all the way through, they're missing something, and I think that's a real sadness, because at some point Vicky and I will be gone out of this industry, and you're the ones coming up, and if you don't understand those skills, I worry where the industry will go. And also I'm seeing more and more budgets getting slashed and slashed and slashed, where it's really impossible to make the program for the budget. And the way they get around that is they go, well, we'll sell it at the back end and we'll recoup our money through the sales. But the other way they do it is that your hours end up getting longer and longer, and sometimes you're doing 14-hour days for no extra money. And most people don't mind, but I think there is
doesn't contribute to the work-life balance, does it?
No, it doesn't contribute to the work-life balance. And also, I don't think it's right. If they've slashed the budgets, you can't slash the budget and then expect somebody to do double time to make up for it.
No,
I don't think that's right.
No, absolutely.
So I would like to see that change and just have proper budgets. I don't think that's going to happen, though. Sorry.
And more apprenticeships would be good. That'd be great to have more apprenticeships. It's what you're saying, isn't it? But I suppose there's lots of sort of independent production companies, which is quite often what I work for, and they haven't got the finances for that. But the sort of the Netflix of this world, or the BBC, they could definitely put more money into those kind of funding pools, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess one of the things we're interested in here is if we can have more partnerships with organisations where people are earning their degree whilst doing real things. The more real experiences we have here, the happier we are.
That's
that's
the
how
only
you
way to
learn.
learn.
You do learn. Yeah, you have to be on the core.
Just reading a book about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely doing it. Yeah, there's no way around that, is there? Ines? Yeah. And you not only learn how to do it, but you learn what you like, you learn what you're good at, all those kind of things, only by doing it.
Building confidence. I think Screenology was really good for that because it's one of the only courses in Bristol that I know where you can just email Tom or anyone and be like, I got a job for 6 weeks, and they'd be like, yeah, cool, good luck, let us know the way it goes.
Yeah.
And that's the most valuable experience we can have.
And I find it shocking that some universities say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? What? And what?
What are you trying to get into?
It's absolutely insane. Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. It's been really great listening to your stories and your authenticity, and and I've learned a few tricks about getting even more comfortable with people and having them be authentic. So thank you for that as well. I'll just leave the last word to you. If there's anything you'd like to say or share that you want to say before we wind up, over to you guys. Anything?
But I would like to say thank you, because there's so much worries recently about the industry. I think, especially the documentary side of it, and you've been answering quite a lot of questions. And I've just feel a little bit lighter, maybe, to go and look for something. Maybe it seems a bit less distant.
Great.
Now. So thank you very much.
And I think also, we're just all people, aren't we? So just come and say hello, because that's what I had to do you spend so much time thinking, oh, I can't do it, I'll just write a nice letter with a lovely CV, and actually you just need to go hi, because or text or whatever. But we need to do more of it.
Get to use every contact you possibly can to get in and say hello to somebody. Don't write a letter and then get disappointed because you don't get a response or a job, because I don't think that's the way to get in. It's really not. And any opportunity you are given to get, even if it's a grain of experience, grab it, because it's so important.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. That is a wrap.